From the round table at Uncle's Studios in beautiful Southern California, welcome to another edition of Work Matters, the central location for you employees, you employers, and of course, we haven't forgotten about you damn independent contractors. My name is Steve Appel, and I'll be your host for the next hour with some talk, some news, and hopefully some answers about work comp matters. Thanks for being part of the show, and if you can break away from your work comp matters, feel free to give us a call and clue us in. The phone number worldwide, 818-357-4120. You can send me an email to wcexaminer@aol.com. Heck, you can be old school. Send a fax, 818-475-1437. With me in studio, my right-hand man, Dr. Michael Zima. The best-dressed man, Ted Durden. Attorney Robert Ozeron is here, too, my protege, on the board with technical difficulties. Scott Walton of Uncle's Studio. Back in Munich, Germany is John Scalia. And, of course, back at WorkComp Central, making sure the whole damn thing goes right, is Jake Paris. Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to another edition of WorkCom Matters. We're brought to you by A1 Law, Santa Monica Tickets, and ABC Rugs. If you want the number one computer management system used by more workers' compensation attorneys than any other system in the damn Kuiper Belt, give me a call at 818-357-4120 for your no-strings-attached money-back guaranteed $1 a day. A1 Law. And if you want those hard-to-get sold-out, even front row concert, sports, and theater tickets, give our buddy Brian a call at Santa Monica Tickets, 310-395-8587. And last but not least, here's a little something from our friends at ABC Rugs. ABC Rugs has been in the business of manufacturing and direct importation and exportation of Persian and Oriental rugs for more than 39 years. ABC Rugs is a direct importer and wholesaler of antique, Moroccan, Oriental, and Persian rugs. Established in 1978, ABC Rugs is definitely old school. 323-897-5444. That's ABC Rugs. 323-897-5444. And there goes ABC Rugs, in addition to some mic stand noise. That's okay. That's just part of doing a live show, so to speak. No, we're not broadcast live, but we try and do as few post-production as possible and record the show uninterrupted. It makes for good podcast radio, don't you think, Doctor?
Yes, and there's only been a few times when we've actually had to edit.
Yeah, for content. Yes. Most of the time, if anything.
Or defamation.
Edit or content or defamation. And Ted is in. You're looking as well-dressed as ever, my friend. How the heck are you? How was the board today?
It was a little crazy today, but, I'm none the worse for wear. It's a good day overall.
That's absolutely wonderful. We are here on Work Comp Matters, and, of course, it is the day after the elections. And before we get to the election results, and we are filled to the gills with information, we got a whole slew of typos, but we got a bunch of information. I wanted to talk about a few things besides the election. Right hot off the press, United States Attorney General Jeff Sessions has resigned, and I wanted to talk very briefly about Attorney Jeff Sessions and his resignation after President Trump's, directly after President Trump's press conference today on the election,
where Trump was asked if Sessions' job was in jeopardy.
And he deferred all that, which is okay. Mm-hmm. I have never liked Jeff Sessions as a person. No, I don't know him personally. I just know him from public life. I have never liked Jeff Sessions' politics. However, as an employee, as the United States Attorney General for the past 2 years, there is no question in my mind that he gets an A+. He gets 10 stars. He is one of the best employees I have ever seen. I was asked today, am I surprised that he resigned? My immediate response without blinking an eye, no, I'm surprised that he lasted 2 years.
He took a lot of crap.
He took a lot of shiite, okay?
He sure did.
And he never once responded negatively to his employer, primarily Donald Trump, but of course the American people. I think one time a couple of months ago, Trump tweeted out something derogatory about Sessions. Sessions responded within 24 hours, not attacking Donald Trump, not attacking the American people, not attacking the government, but essentially said that since I have been in this office, I have performed to the best of my ability. I have performed and concluded the responsibilities I'm assigned to do. And I have, in so many words, I'm paraphrasing, I have nothing to apologize for or be ashamed of. So as an employee, Jeff, you're welcome to come work for me anytime, pal. I don't think I can match your salary demands. But as an employee, Jeff Sessions is a classic example of what I think all employees should be.
And I'll tell you one thing that he did say when he responded to Trump, and I really had a lot of respect for him. He said, I have conducted my job without political influence.
Absolutely.
Because what Trump said, I wish Jeff Sessions would take control of the Department of Justice. He said, I have been in control from day one.
Well, Ted, I'm not surprised you said that. You drink less than me, you smoke less than me, and obviously your memory is better than mine. Ted, but absolutely. Jeff Sessions is a fantastic employee, even though I don't like his politics or his personality.
Well, we were talking before. I believe you said that he was a racist, or at least had been.
I don't want to go on record as saying that, but...
Or at least he had been.
Yeah, Mike, I said that to you in private confidence, and yes, I did not say... I didn't lower the cone, so yes, I said it.
It wasn't coned.
You know what?
Sorry.
No, it's okay. And we're not going to edit this, okay? In the 2 years that Jeff Sessions has been Attorney General, I said to Mike today... I presumed falsely in confidence I think Jeff Sessions is a racist. Actually, I think it was you that asked me, Steve, do you think he's a racist? And I said yes.
Yeah. Well, I think what it is a
what
lot
do you
of...
think, Ted?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I think that he is, in the sense that a lot of when he was even the Attorney General, was for the state of Alabama, correct?
I think it was either Arkansas or Alabama. Probably Alabama. He was the Attorney General in Alabama.
Right. He has a record and a history of slowly trying to erode civil rights. He's done that, and he's done that a little bit since he's been in office. He has. He has been the point of Trump's spear when it comes to the issue of immigration. He was one that implemented the zero tolerance that resulted in minor children being separated from their parents.
That's true.
So he has had leanings in that sense, and maybe that would be a better characterization. He has had leanings in that sense. Since I don't know the man personally, perhaps it isn't fair for me to say that he is a racist, but a lot of his politics.
How old of a guy is he, Jeff Sessions? Like mid-60s?
Yeah, I think he's like 68, I believe.
That sounds right.
Yeah.
He's an old South guy.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely.
An old South white guy.
The next thing that I wanted to talk about is the Mexican fruit fly. Now, we have a story on the Mexican fruit fly where parts of L.A. County and I believe Long Beach County have been quarantined off because they They found less than half a dozen fruit flies, and 2 of them were impregnated females. Right. Now, I've been living in my current home in Woodland Hills for 14 years. I had fruit flies in the kitchen earlier in the year or late last year.
Really?
And I looked online how to get rid of them, and I got rid of them within 2 or 3 days. And what you need to do is as follows. You take a coffee cup or a wine glass or a cup with a wide opening. You then take a sheet of paper, either 8.5 by 11 or 11 by 14, and you roll it up sort of like a snow cone holder. And then you put the small bottom in the bottom part of the cup, you have the top bigger part open at the top of the cup, and then you pour in the cup maybe an inch from the bottom a sugary substance, either Coca-Cola, Pepsi. I used wine.
Okay.
And you will see all of the fruit flies start to attract towards that cup and eventually fall in the cup and or in the snow cone. And we gave it like about 48 to 72 hours, and all the fruit flies.
But did
were
you
dead in
actually
my house.
have a Mexican fruit fly
Now that
infestation?
I knew you were going to ask, and that's a very good question. Okay,
It had little sombreros.
I was going to say I did not ask them for ID. I did not capture one and find out, and I didn't ask them for their passes to the United States. I just wanted those little suckers eradicated. I wanted to kill them.
But did you call the
wanted
Department of
them dead.
Agriculture?
Nope. I just looked online and said, "How do you kill fruit flies, baby?"
Okay, so let me ask you this question then. Okay, so they were attracted to the sugar, so they're inside the cone. So what do? Just cover it and trash it? Is that pretty much it? Do you spray it with insecticide?
No.
What do you do?
No, good question. No, and you don't. And in fact, I think what I did was after about a day and a half, I just crumpled the whole thing together, threw it out, and put out another trap exactly where it was. So I had 2 traps within 72 hours, and they were all gone. But boy, right at first, I saw a couple, and then 12 hours later, there was like 50 of them or whatever.
Wow.
And I was very fortunate to get rid of them. So fruit flies, just be aware that parts of Long Beach and L.A. County are quarantined for fruit flies. The next thing I want to talk about before we talk about election results is Jim Acosta and CNN. Jim Acosta apparently has had press credentials for the White House for about the past 5 years. And today at Trump's press conference, President Trump apparently decided he don't want them there anymore. So as Acosta was exiting the White House, he was stopped by Secret Service. He was asked for his press credentials, and he taped the whole thing. Now, I don't have the recording of that here for you, but essentially he basically said, you're no longer welcome here. Now, I asked Mike before the show about how many CNN reporters have credentials, and you said about 5 of them, and they're located down in the center.
My understanding is they get most of the primo seats, or a significant amount of them, so they're down there. But I got to say that I thought Jim Acosta was a complete a-hole today. Now, should he get his credentials yanked? I don't know, but I got to tell you, I was thinking that if I was Trump and I was facing that type of thing, I would just stick out my middle finger and say, get a good 360-degree view of this and whatever. That's the way. He's a street fighter. What do you expect from him, But, sometimes you hear the House of Commons, on BBC or whatever. Have you ever heard those people argue?
Look,
they go at each other. You big fat,
No, but they have nothing, absolutely nothing on the Koreans. Have you ever seen that? They actually get into fights. Yes. I'm talking physical
you
fights.
Mean Korean press conferences of the?
I'm talking
sessions of
the legislature.
Oh, okay.
No, they get into physical fights. They get into physical fights. So what we do is relatively tame compared to what may happen in other countries, as it were. Now, my whole take on, I haven't seen the whole thing. I've read something about it. I think I can say without question, this has probably been the most acrimonious relationship between a White House administration and the press. The
Nixon
closest,
got close.
I was going to say, Nixon was the only other one that came very, very close to it. But nobody goes after the press the way that Donald Trump does. As bad as Nixon was during his presidency, and he was pretty bad.
Do you think any other president could have gotten away with it?
No, I don't. I really don't. But the problem is there are repercussions as a result. I take a little issue with what we said off the mic prior to the program, Mike, when you indicated that CNN has never said anything good. That isn't true. They
about
did
certain things. I specifically said they've never said anything good about the Trump-generated economy ever.
Well, they did acknowledge the fact that the economy has improved under Trump. Now, what they did not do... I
have not heard that.
No, I read that. Now, what they did not do, they did not credit it to him specifically. And that isn't unusual, because there were a lot of times, even during when Clinton was in office, when Obama was in office, even when George Bush was in office, whenever the economy improved...
It's the remnants of the prior president.
Right. Or they would say that the president can do very little to affect the economy because it is the... what's the division that controls the interest rate and so forth?
Well, it's a banking concern. Central bank or
not the central bank.
Treasury?
Yes, the Treasury. Now, sometimes if they cut interest rates, that will sometimes help stimulate the economy.
Yeah.
And he can often urge them to do it, but they're not bound to do it.
There is no question in my mind that the stock market is where it is now because of Donald Trump. It's not because of Obama.
Do you disagree with that, Ted?
I would disagree with it to a certain extent, because you have to understand the economy oftentimes is a result of what happened to the prior presidencies. And now he's been in there 2 years.
Well, I didn't say the economy. I said the stock market.
Oh, that's
Go
right.
ahead.
You did
Go
say
ahead.
the stock. No, that now you may be true there because of the fact that the stock market always responds that well, because the same thing happened when Bush Jr. went in, because of the fact that the stock market loves that when there's a businessman at the helm in the White House.
They get very bullish.
Oh, yes,
That's correct.
they do. And so when Trump went in, there was an immediate surge. But at the same time, I think it was about 2 weeks ago, there was a pretty bad crash, and they did recover. So, there's plus and minuses when you want to assume credit
The
for
Dow
what happens in
Jones
the
is
stock
about
market.
at 2025, give or take right now. When Trump went in, I think it was like 12 or 13. I mean, stocks in the past 2 years, the Dow... the Dow, I think, has gone up 75% in 2 years or something.
But the thing
like
is, it can always go back down. And,
yeah,
it's
sure.
just,
It's a bubble.
yeah,
It's a
it
bubble.
can be.
Yeah,
it can be. I mean,
right.
generally over the decades, it's a stair step upstairs. So you can't really get screwed in the long term, obviously, unless you buy some dog stocks.
Well, I certainly can't disagree with that. Very well put, Doctor.
Thank you.
Anyways, my name is Steve Appel. You're listening to WorkCom Matters. We're brought to you by A1 Law, Santa Monica Tickets, and, of course, ABC Rugs. Well, of course, the title of the show, Post-Election Results. And I guess we should get to the first story, which, of course, I mean, this show is about California politics. Gavin Newsom was elected handedly as our new governor. I mean, I was talking to Mike before the show. What, 40 to 60%? He got 2/3 of the vote?
I think that the source that I checked was accurate. Okay, so the Cox, I guess his name was Cox,
Right.
he got his ass kicked.
Yeah.
My audible groan. I did not want Gavin Newsom to be governor. I'll admit it. And I'm a registered Democrat.
And I'm a rhino, and I voted for John Cox. There is no way that I want Mr. Gavin Newsom. Let me tell you a little something, Mike. Then you can go. Okay, Gavin Newsom, former mayor of San Francisco, good-looking man, hot wife, knows how to talk, very
eloquent.
very eloquent, excellent, very charismatic, excellent behind a microphone, excellent on a stage. My friends, within the next 4 years, our taxes are going to double, or at least Governor Newsom is going to propose that our taxes double in the next 4 years.
To pay for this and that. Important stuff, but
we are going to get taxed on things you had never even thought you can get taxed on.
Like breathing.
Thank you. The homeless are going to be smelt more, heard more, seen more, and the immigration problem, at least in California, is going to get worse. I believe I read, and it's in a news story, that Xavier Becerra, the Attorney General, he was reelected. Yes. He has sued the Trump presidency, the Trump administration, on behalf of California 44 times in the past 2 years.
I don't think he's ever prevailed, has he?
Yeah, well, I don't think anything's ever gone to trial, so to speak.
Okay.
I would expect that number to double in the next 4 years. I'm normally not into making too many predictions, and I think that this state is going to go to shite.
Yeah, it's going to go to hell in a handbasket.
Well,
and I'm telling you, you talked about the homeless. When Gavin Newsom, they're going to be the next protected class. You trust me on this.
That's a very good point. But let me ask you this. Okay, maybe this is a curveball. Okay, but have you guys considered Gavin Newsom versus the NRA? Considered that?
No, I haven't even thought of it. No,
because he's got los huevos when it comes to dealing with the NRA, and that's what I'm looking for.
What are you saying exactly?
He's going to take on the NRA.
And do what?
And do what?
Haven't figured that out yet.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Lawsuits, I assume.
But there's no smoking gun then, Mike.
I don't know.
Hey, you know, if there's one thing I think across party lines, and I could be wrong, Californians, we love our guns. Now, that being said, we may have some quips about the semi-automatics versus the fully automatics, the AR-50s versus whatever, but no one's going to take away guns.
No,
I don't see that happening.
No, I think if he did anything, he might try to limit the number of magazines that you can purchase.
The number of rounds you can put in a magazine, but it's already at 10, reduced from 15, right?
Yes, and he may do something more as far as background checks and making sure that they don't end up in the hands of the the mentally challenged.
I have a feeling that it's going to have something to do with money, dough. Somehow he's going to figure out a way to impose liability on
for murders
or
and for
whatever,
crimes.
or for manufacturers. He's going to do something economically. That's what I'm predicting, and it's going to be very interesting.
Well, if anything, and I think there's already a law in the books as far as bumper stocks are concerned. So he may go further as far as limiting or restricting gun owners from doing something that can change their semi-automatic
change a semi-automatic to a fully automatic.
Correct.
That's known as a bumper
stock. Right,
stock.
that's what I said, bumper stock, right.
Yeah.
So he may go further to restrict that, but I think there's already a law in the books regarding that
I was just going to say, isn't that federal law already?
Yes,
okay.
It is. So I only thing I can see him doing is possibly some stronger background checks and the ability for gun sales at some gun shows, because there are not a whole lot of restrictions there.
That also, yes. I think he'll go after that.
I can see that. I can see that happening.
Imposing civil liability on those parties.
Right.
That would shut them down tomorrow.
Yeah, more than likely, yeah.
Which might be an interesting development. I don't know. I just like the way he will face, I think, the NRA, because I think they get away with a lot of bull.
But see, at the end of the day, and we've talked about this before when it comes to, gun rights and trying to restrict gun purchases and so forth, a criminal's going to find a way to get a gun.
That's true.
That's just going to happen. So to focus so much of your energy on the law-abiding citizens of this state or of this country, trying to restrict gun ownership in that sense, okay, because with some of the horrible crimes that have happened here recently, like what happened in Philadelphia, what happened in Parkland, those weren't criminals per se. They weren't. Now, you may have something to do with those incidents occurring, but that's not going to stop the everyday crime that occurs every day, because a criminal is going to get a gun. They're going to.
In a banner year for challengers and diversity, Kevin De Leon, the former Democratic leader of the state Senate, just lost his bid to unseat five-time United States Senator Dianne Feinstein. However, we at WorkCom Matters recommend all listeners watch Mr. De Leon's next moves closely. Despite the loss, he remains one of the most prominent Latino political leaders in California. So we recommend you keep an eye on Mr. De Leon and what his future political aspirations are.
The clearest Democratic pickup appeared to come in the 49th District, which takes in southern Orange County and northern San Diego, where the longtime Republican Darrell Issa announced plans to retire. Mike Levin, a Democrat and an environmental lawyer, is predicted to win the seat.
The Democrats may have captured a once unthinkable win in coastal Orange County, the longtime Republican Congresswoman Dana Rohrabacher is trailing the Democrat Harley Ruda, a real estate executive, and a former Republican by a point or two in a race too close to call.
Young Kim, a Korean-American Republican, looked as though she would beat the Democrat Gil Cisneros in the 39th District, which includes the inland suburbs of LA and northern Orange County. The results will undoubtedly be parsed for what they say about Asian American political influence in the region.
See why I didn't want to read that goobly-goop story, you know what I mean? In Orange County's 45th District, just a few thousand votes favored Representative Mimi Walters over her Democratic challenger, Katie Porter, a law professor at the University of California, Irvine. My name is Steve Appel. You're listening to Work Out Matters. We're brought to you by A1 Law, Santa Monica Tickets, and ABC Rugs. We're going to get back to more election results, but first we have to hear from our longtime contributor. He has been a licensed California attorney for over 45 years, but he's hanging out in Munich, Germany. With some talk, John Scalia.
Hi, this is John with the Work Comp International Report from Munich. This week I'm going to talk about employment law, specifically about the relationship between the University of Maryland and their now former football coach, DJ Durkin. Football coaches are under personal service contracts, which spell out a number of conditions for their employment. But first, a brief summary of what happened. A young athlete, football player at the University of Maryland, Jordan McNair, dropped dead on the practice field. McNair was 6'4" and 320 pounds. What did he die from? He died from heat stroke. Now, heat stroke is something which is easily preventable and easily treated. You have symptoms, you know they're happening, you stop the activity, and you hydrate. I know this from personal experience. I've had heat stroke. However, if you do not stop the activity and you do not hydrate, then you run into serious health problems. Football is obviously a macho sport, so the players are reluctant to tell the coach that they're feeling bad. They're reluctant to say, Coach, I'm dizzy, I'm woozy, I don't think I can go on. Because after all, the coach may think you're weak, he may think that you're not strong enough to play, and by the nature of the game, it's very macho. So Jordan McNair, as we say, sucked it up, and he sucked it up unto death. Well, let's put some things in perspective. College athletics is a huge business. The National Collegiate Athletic Association is a multi-billion-dollar industry. But, that's a generality. Let's get more specific. The University of Maryland, which is a large university system, pays its president $600,000 per year. Sounds like a fortune, but actually it's less than the median salary for university presidents. Puts them at about the 43rd percentile. The athletic director at Maryland receives $720,000 per year. And then when we get to the crown jewel of athletics at any Division I school, football, the football coach, DJ Durkin, was receiving $2.5 million per year. That's lots of money. Now, every football coach's or every athletic coach's contract has conditions of employment, and they also have certain requirements that they're expected to meet. And they also have morals clauses. Now, the morals clauses generally deal with sexual misconduct. They're enforced when it involves the coach involving himself in or herself in a relationship with players, students, or extramarital affairs, blah, blah, blah. However, the one-loss record can atone for a multitude of sins. The Ohio State football coach was found not to have reported sexual battery by one of his assistant coaches, and as a result of his infraction, he was suspended for 3 games. Because he wins lots of games. DJ Durkin was originally put on suspension while an investigation was held. The school said, we're going to hire him back. And there was such a public outroar that they said, well, we're going to fire him without cause, meaning, we'll pay him the rest of the $5 million we owe him because there's nothing that he violated in the contract for cause. Really? A football coach is, to many of the students, to many of the athletes, a father figure. Lots of them don't have a father at home. And so the football coach is a surrogate dad. I also know this from personal experience. I came from a home where there was a single parent, my mom. And while I was not involved in football, I was involved in debating to a great extent. To such an extent that from San Francisco, we traveled 3 times during my 4 years to debate tournaments in Santa Barbara. We traveled 1 time all the way across the country to debate at Georgetown University in Washington, D.C. We traveled another time after we qualified for nationals to Ohio to debate, and we drove a car back from the Middle West all the way back to San Francisco with just my debate partner, me, and the debate coach. So obviously you can understand how these guys become surrogate dads. They are in charge of the care and feeding of people under their care. And obviously, more needs to be done. Obviously, they're not doing a good enough job in some instances, and the NCAA should step in. How? Well, it's actually fairly simple. When the combination of humidity and temperature exceeds a certain number, outdoor practices should be prohibited. Plain and simple. The professional tennis tours do that. Okay? So just do that. Secondly, there should be mandated water breaks during workouts. That may go against the macho culture, but it's macho culture or dead athletes. Mandate water breaks. Mandate that there be hydration. Mandate that there be breaks during the workouts. The NCAA has the power. It should use it. Unfortunately, it does not appear that there will be any meaningful reform as a result of this tragedy. That's the View from Munich this week.
And once again, John, thank you for your very valuable contributions on WorkCom Matters. My name is Steve Appel. We're brought to you by A1 Law, Santa Monica Tickets, and ABC Rugs. We'll be back with more election results after our musical break.
How does it feel to be one of the beautiful people? Now that you know who you are, what do you want to be? And have you traveled very far? Far as the eye can see. Baby, you're a rich man. Baby, you're a rich man too. You keep all your money in a big brown bag inside a zoo. What a thing to do. How does it feel to be one of the beautiful people? How often have you been there? Often enough to know. What did you see when you were there? Nothing that doesn't show. Baby, you're a rich man. Baby, you're a rich man too. You keep all your money in a big brown bag inside a zoo. What a thing to do.
Glenn Laughlin on Work Comp Matters. Our next story is by the best dressed man in California workers' compensation. But heck, I just call him Mr. Ted Durden.
And in what I call a referendum to voters who really don't give a damn if some politicians break the law, throwback to when Marion Barry was reelected, even after he got caught on film freebasing in a hotel room. Representative Duncan Hunter appeared set to win re-election despite being under federal indictment after being accused of using nearly $250,000 in campaign funds for personal expenses. His campaign came under fire for racist messaging after he called Amar Campa Najar, his Latino Arab opponent, a national security threat and a Muslim Brotherhood sympathizer. Right. And let's not forget, in order to save his own ass, he threw his wife up under the bus.
He did.
Actually, I think he threw his wife under the limousine, but it's kind of the same thing. Yeah, he said, well, when accused of filtering or illegally using $250,000 in campaign funds, what was his response? Well, my wife keeps all the books.
Yes.
Right.
She does all the money stuff. I don't really know. I'm so busy doing my other stuff.
It is true that my ex-wife kept all her books. I trusted her.
Well, she was an accountant. That's kind of different, isn't it?
Accountant. She was manager of a stock brokerage firm.
Oh, there you go.
But then again, maybe that's why I'm divorced now for 17 years. Who's got or who wants the next news story?
Facebook said it had blocked more than 100 Facebook and Instagram accounts, quote, due to concerns that they were linked to the Russia-based Internet Research Agency, end quote, just hours after most polls had closed on Tuesday, according to the New York Times. My thought upon reading this is, why didn't they do that before the election?
My thought upon reading this was, what happened to the 100,000 or a million Facebook account? What is this 100 accounts?
I know that's
nothing.
No, that's a pimple on the ass.
I was going to say a pimple on a flea. Representatives Devin Nunes said David Valadao each won re-election, and what worked in these agricultural heavy districts with large Latino populations could be a guide to other inland parts of the state.
Democratic Katie Hill was leading the Republican incumbent Steve Knight in the 25th district in the northern suburb near Los Angeles, with more counting to be done. But in a late development this afternoon, Steve Knight actually conceded to Katie Hill, and she has
That's our district, correct?
Yes, it is.
In the conservative-leaning Central Valley, Democrats saw hope in the 10th congressional district, where just hundreds of votes separated Representative Jeff Denham and Josh Harder, the Democratic challenger. Republicans fared better in other parts of the Central Valley.
California counties have 30 days to count and certify votes, meaning congressional results may not be official until December 7th. The state switched in recent years to a mail-in ballot system aimed at maximizing turnout at the cost of speedy results, according to the Sacramento Bee.
Democratic leaders said they would advance sweeping changes to future campaign and ethics laws. The idea, said Representative Nancy Pelosi, the House Minority Leader, was to show voters that Democrats are a governing party and not the leftist mob that the president has described, according to the New York Times. Well, what a waste. If you're going to do your job, do your job. Don't say it because you don't want to look like a mob. That's just caving in to fodder.
Pelosi, who is now probably the Speaker of the House, can you imagine when Trump does his State of the Union in February? You're going to have Trump there talking, and then behind him, you're going to have Jeff Pence sitting next to Nancy Pelosi.
Wow, that's a weird image. But they were both kind in speaking about each other today, which was
let me
relatively
tell you,
unusual.
Pelosi knows how to raise money. Okay, you want to talk about a representative that knows how to raise bank. Trust me, it is Nancy Pelosi.
Well, but I believe that she's going to be challenged for the speakership this time. I don't think
I
that.
doubt it. But go ahead.
I don't think there's a guarantee. I don't think so. There's been a lot of disaffection with her lately within Democratic ranks.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of
and the
that.
one thing that just kind of annoys me a lot when Trump is speaking, or even when Pence is speaking, the face making. Just stop with the making faces. Just cut it out.
Who's making faces? What are you referring to?
Pelosi.
She makes faces when she hears other people talk?
Yeah, she's
I've never noticed that.
Oh, yeah. She makes frowning faces, furling the old eyebrows and stuff like that. It's just annoying.
The silent majority. Oil companies spent $8 million trying to block Measure G, a bailout initiative in San Luis Obispo County that would ban hydraulic fracturing and the development of any new oil wells and infrastructure.
California candidates and political action committees spent more than $1 billion on 2018 political races, according to new data.
A record number of candidates for governor across the nation supported legalizing marijuana.
There we go. Now we're talking. Please continue. Go ahead, Ted. Go ahead.
420 all day, every day on stage. Mr. Newsom became one of the first mainstream Democrats to endorse legalization in 2012 when he was lieutenant governor.
He also, I think, was one of the first, if not the first mayors to put support of and work towards legalizing gay marriage.
And I think what we can look forward to is that smog that covers the L.A. basin by replaced with a smog of a different type now.
I got to say, and I know that was a joke, but I'm not laughing. I'm a rhino.
I just got it. Sorry.
And I'm not even going to try and get it. I'm a rhino, and not that other rhinos there follow my politics, but I am conservative when it comes to fiscal issues, and I am liberal when it comes to social issues. Now, as far as Gavin Newsom goes, I pretty much back most of his social issues. Look, gay people, homosexuals, lesbians, they have every right to go through the miserable life through divorce that I went through. And if they want to go ahead and get married, to get divorced eventually and go through all that crap, that's fine with me. But when it comes to financial issues, forget it. I mean, you have no business being our governor, sir. And I say that with all due respect. And you have an open invitation. You come on to Work Comp Matters, and you can defend your fiscal points of view anytime you want. But just remember one thing. Don't forget your hot wife.
Ex-wife.
What?
Guilfoyle was her last name. What was her first name?
Well, who the heck was hugging him when he won?
Oh, I guess he's got a new trophy wife.
Evidently, yeah. He hasn't been with her in a while.
A portion of Los Angeles County, including the Los Angeles and Long Beach ports, have been placed under quarantine for the Mexican fruit fly following the detection of 3 flies, including 2 mated females, within the city of Long Beach, officials announced Wednesday. And Steve, you should just go down there and teach them, how to make that thing, the trap.
Exactly.
The cone trap.
Right. But instead, what they're doing, and, I don't know, the more scientific thing that these guys are doing is releasing literally thousands of male
sterilized
fruit flies.
And that's always something that's fascinated me, just as a quick aside. How do you get sterile male fruit flies? What do you put them under radiation or something?
Rocky Mountain oysters?
I don't know. And again, I don't know if this is true. I heard that the reason why the only fruit we import from Hawaii is pineapples is because all of the rest are infested with fruit flies.
Really?
By the time we get here. You think mangoes, but a lot of the mangoes that are in, I go to Trader Joe's and Ralph's and such, they're mangoes, but they're not from Hawaii.
Well, do you guys remember the Malathion helicopters?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I remember those days. Oh, my God.
Spraying the Malathion.
Is that something like paraquat or what?
No, it was widespread. I was living in San Francisco at the time, and they came through, working on the peninsula, but living in San Francisco.
Right. Democrat Ricardo Lara is leading Republican-turned independent Steve Poizner in the race for California Insurance Commissioner in a race too close to call.
Yeah, I think Poizner's going to lose that one. He's our current insurance commissioner, which, by the way, that just became an official political office, I think, 2 or 4 years ago. That's a brand new office, right?
Well, and Posner
because he used to be appointed.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it used to be appointed.
Right, exactly.
Yes, it was appointed as opposed to being elected.
You know the point on the sample ballot where it says Democrat or Republican or whatever? Mm-hmm. He refused to state, which I thought was interesting. But hasn't he been a relatively good insurance commissioner?
think he's pretty much been under the radar and
Stays out of trouble.
He stays out of trouble, and then of course when they get a big fraud busting thing, he is right there in front of the cameras. Let's talk for a moment about Proposition 6. Proposition 6 was well defeated, and I have to give credit to the Secretary of State for totally misleading the California voters as to what Prop 6 was about. Prop 6 was quite simply the repeal of the 12-cent gas tax. But you never saw that on the information when you went in to vote. All you saw was it's going to reduce infrastructure and take money away from roads and bridges. And it was a total fraud by the California state government on the voting people. And I think something should be done about it.
I got to tell you, I didn't notice that.
Yeah.
I read the materials. I didn't notice that.
Yeah, the way it was
You didn't
written.
notice what?
What you just said.
Well,
I was looking at the money. I mean,
No.
frankly, I recall the arguments being that they say $52 billion, is going towards
And
whatever, and it's really like a fraction of
They
that.
never mentioned the gas tax. And the fact is, the proposition was put on by the people, and it was very simply to repeal the recently enacted 12-cent gas tax. But instead, you never saw that.
Right.
And it attacked infrastructure, and it totally misrepresented what the proposition was about, and I think we should do something about it.
And you know who the radio personality is? It John
It was
and Ken?
KFI, John and Ken that spearheaded the
Right.
thing.
Really?
Yeah, they went on the attack about it. Yeah, they most certainly did. And they did a fantastic job. And I agree with Steve. You have to be very, very careful when you look at these ballot measures because the way that they're written in such a manner that if you're not really paying close attention, it can be very confusing, and you could actually vote for something that you're actually against.
Now, John and Ken, are they on KFI?
Yeah,
Yes,
they're
they
on
are.
What's
KFI.
the radio station? 690 or what is it?
It's
640, isn't it?
6:40 a.m.
Right.
John and Ken are on from 2 to 5 o'clock, 2 to 6 o'clock
Something like that,
in
right.
the afternoon, Monday through Friday. I'm a big KFI fan.
Yeah, so am I.
California voters approved Proposition 4. Actually, I think Prop 1, 2, 3, and 4, those were all bond measures. This one to sell $1.5 billion in bonds for children's hospitals to be used mainly on infrastructure projects. And the measure had nearly 60% support. Bond measures traditionally get approved in California politics because they figure, well, we're just borrowing the money. The state will issue bonds.
Bond
But
indebtedness is
I was
amazing.
just going to say, but soon
Billions.
enough, especially with, I can't even say it, Governor Newsom, the state is going to end up owing so much money. And then what happens if you can't pay the bonds back?
Well, I think we should, at this point, go over the 11 ballot measures, and I will if
I think
don't.
you should. You two should go for it. I'm going to make sure the accoutrements here at the round table are okay.
Okay, voters weighed in on 11 ballot measures that ranged from an initiative to repeal a gas tax to one that would regulate profits at kidney dialysis centers. That's the one that I read it and I didn't know what I was reading. And another that offered a tax break for I know I'm simple, but and offered a tax break for downsizing baby boomers. Here's where they stand this morning, and it's Wednesday morning, the 6th or the 7th. I can't even remember.
The days of 7.
Okay, 7th. Proposition 1, the $4 billion housing bond backed by Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg and his wife, Priscilla Chan, is ahead with 54% of voters favoring it. So that's a $4 billion housing bond. 2 is voters approved the proposal to spend about $2 billion on housing and services for the homeless. It was passed with 60.4% of the vote. Funding for the measure would come from the quote, millionaire's tax, end quote, that voters approved in 2004 for mental health services.
And remember, we've got $2.5 billion sitting in the general fund right now that is earmarked for mental health. It's
Now
just
it's going to
sitting
be
there.
$2 billion more.
Yeah, but the question is, it's been sitting there because nobody can agree on how to use it and how to spend it.
That's too bad.
So it's just sitting there,
That's
and,
too
and the
bad.
people that need it the most aren't getting the help that they need.
Yeah. Proposition 3, the $8.9 billion bond for water projects, is too close to call, with 52.4% of voters opposing it. Voters approved a $4.1 billion water bond in June. They've also approved bonds for water projects in 2014, 2006, and 2002.
Ted, why don't you read the next couple of props?
Sure. Proposition 4. 13 California children's hospitals stand to gain $1.5 billion for construction projects because almost 60% of voters approve this measure. The hospitals and Salesforce chief executive Mark Benioff raised $11.5 million to support the proposition.
Now, I would be for that if the dough actually goes to what it's supposed to go to, right? And that was always been my problem with the gas tax.
It's always been my problem with California legislature is
Just
that
in period.
They mismanage the money. They spend it where it's not supposed to go. It's earmarked for one thing. They throw it in the general fund.
It's supposed to happen in other states too, though, right?
It probably does, but I don't know if it's to this extent. Like one of my biggest
Well,
complaints.
we've got more money than any other state.
Well, that's true too.
Maybe.
Yeah, we're like a third. Well, yeah, we're the third largest economy in the world.
We have the fifth largest economy
Is
in
it
the
fifth?
world. Thank
Okay.
you. Yeah.
Now, and like what Steve was just talking about, and I agree with you, Mike. The perfect example of that is the California lottery. Now, they said when that was first implemented, it was going to be for schools, and we still are underfunded at our schools. The amount of money they spend per capita for each student is like 100th in the world.
Really?
It's horrible.
Well,
but we have all this money coming in.
Is there an
All the-
accounting as far as the lottery goes as to what percentage of their dough, other than overhead, goes to schools? Has
Yeah,
there
well,
ever been?
it's supposed to, but what happened is, like what Steve says, it's supposed to be earmarked for them to get spent on other things. Because
I'm sorry for interrupting. California is rated like 47th to 50th out of all the states for schools. Go ahead. That's K through 12, not
Right.
universities.
correct, but again, it goes into the general fund, and they just use it for other things. It never gets again where it's supposed to go to. So you have these schools that are dilapidated, need all kind of repairs, and it just isn't getting done because the money's just sitting there and being used for other reasons. That's why I hate some of these bond measures. Anyway, moving right along.
Yeah. What's the next one?
Yeah. Voters, Proposition 5. Voters rejected this proposal to give a property tax break to residents who are older than 55. The measure, supported by the state's real estate industry, would have lowered property taxes for older homeowners if they downsized to smaller houses. Proposition 6. You'll keep paying the 12-cent per gallon gas tax and increased vehicle license fees that took effect a year ago because California rejected this initiative to repeal the charges. The taxes and fees fund a 10-year, $52 billion package of transportation projects that Governor Brown and the legislature approved in 2017. Construction companies, unions, and local governments vastly outspent the Republican activists who tried to repeal the tax.
Mike, what's next? We already talked about the gas tax.
Yes, we did.
Go ahead. What's next?
Okay. Proposition 7. Californians are ready to liberate themselves from daylight savings time. Voters overwhelmingly approved this measure to give state lawmakers the authority to change daylight savings time if federal law allows them to do so. Proposition 8, there was a lot of controversy about this. The companies that run California's dominant kidney dialysis clinics, DaVita and Fresenius, poured $110 million into their campaign against this union-backed measure that would restrict their profits. SEIU, United Healthcare Workers West, supported the initiative, aiming to spur more hiring at the clinics. The clinic money paid off. Voters rejected the initiative.
Got a Prop 9 there?
There is no Prop 9.
And that's because it was ruled unconstitutional by the courts. We'll go to Prop 10. It was ruled unconstitutional. Prop 10 is another biggie.
Voters declined to give local governments new powers to enact rent control. Almost 63% of voters rejected the proposal. And I got to tell you, this was one of the most cockamamie things I have read on a ballot in a long time. I mean, giving a bunch of people who don't maybe know about real estate the authority to govern how much you can make on your property.
Exactly.
I don't
there's
think
also
so.
there's also some stories, although it's not statewide, about Airbnb and how the loss. Well, firstly, Airbnb I think paid San Francisco like $2.5 million recently. Now the Los Angeles City Council is talking about there's a motion to restrict Airbnb stays to 120 days out of the year unless they conform to certain things. And the thoughts are that, okay, Airbnb is short-term rental, which means you could arguably have 360 different people a year coming in and out of your house. Now, mind you, there's no classified advertising restriction. There's no Craigslist restriction. There's no privatized advertising restriction. But if you want to advertise on Airbnb, they're restricting the amount of time that you can do it. And personally, you were just talking about what I'm a huge believer, as I was saying, in my civil rights. And you know what? If I want to have an orgy with farm animals, if I want, in my house, if I want to take off my clothes and yell at the friggin' moon in my house, if I want to contract with Airbnb and have 360 different people in my house, that is my business. And no governmental person should tell me how, why, what, when I should be allowed to do it. Now, if any of those people that are in my house or myself are becoming a nuisance, well, then you have your appropriate remedies.
Right, exactly.
But hell, you know what? What if I attracted all these people by my iPhone 7? Should you now start banning iPhone 7s because Steve Appel is getting renters to move in by his telephone?
Steve, what I don't understand, and again, maybe it's because I'm particularly dense, I don't understand where the 120-day threshold applies in this story.
Because it's less than 180 days. They are just pulling a number out of their ass because it's what's known as a short-term rental. It's not a
120 days be a short-term rental?
Well, because you can have 120 different people in 120 days. They associate Airbnb with a hotel where you stay 1 or 2 days. So if I have a guest room in my home and I make it available every Friday and Saturday for a year, that is basically 104 days because it's 52 weeks. Right. It's what's known as a short-term rental. Then if I start renting on Wednesdays or Tuesdays or Thursdays or whatever. So what the city council is attempting to do is restrict the Airbnb use. They don't say that you're not allowed to have short-term rentals. They say you can't Airbnb it. And I just find that is a violation of my civil rights.
Just to fill out the full slate of proposition results, Proposition 11, emergency medical technicians will be expected to remain on call during their breaks because voters approved this initiative. American Medical Response, a Colorado-based ambulance company, bankrolled most of the $30 million campaign for the measure. And then Proposition 12, Californians resoundingly voted to give hens, calves, and pigs more living space. This measure requires ranchers to raise only cage-free hens by 2022. And, you know, we were talking, I wonder what the economic impact's going to be of that. Sounds humane, but
I don't know about the economic impact, but I know that Governor Newsom is going to work the next 4 years to give those hens, pigs, and chickens more right than the citizens of California. But, I'm just looking into my crystal ball. My name is Steve Appel. It's been a fantastic edition of another Work Comp Matters for the Chief of Staff, my right-hand man, keeping me checking out trouble at least 90% of the time, Dr. Michael Zyma, for the best-dressed man in California workers' compensation, Mr. Ted Durden, for my protege, attorney Robert Ozeron, for Uncle Studios, Scott Walton on the board taking care of the technical difficulties, back in Munich, Germany, 45-year attorney John Scalia, and of course, last but not least, all the good people back at WorkComp Central that continue to support and approve of this valuable project, including but not limited to Lee File and Jake Paris. My name is Steve Appel. We'll see you again next week for another edition of Work Comp Matters.